certification, 3 years ago. How familiar are you guys, is this group with Agile or Scrum? Is this first time you've heard about it?
Heard about it, but not really.
Yeah, we've got some people who use Rational, I think, packages, but yeah, I don't know much about it.
Yeah.
I install it, but I don't really deal with it.
Yep. So, what, we'll talk about Agile, and Scrum is probably the most commonly used Agile method out there, used by development teams, and it's actually used outside of software engineering teams. People that are trying to deliver projects, right? They may have software intensive systems that they're building these things for, or they might just say, you know what, we got this major upgrade project going on. So they apply it to non-technology driven, because it's a project management methodology more than anything. So what we're going to cover is some of the Agile method fundamentals. I'll talk about some of the Agile transformation that's happened within IBM over the last few years, and kind of the business results that we've gained from applying Agile. We'll talk about Rational Team Concert, which is the enabling technology that helped IBM transform and also helping our customers. Right? So what is Agile? Agile really is, it's a new way to manage project delivery, focused on high level of collaboration. Right? Some of the old traditional methods were, let's go figure out what we want to do. So we build a rather intense set of requirements, right? Maybe those requirements are 30, 40 pages long, right? So we spend all this time, build up a set of requirements, and we say, great. So now we're going to go and give it to the people that know how to implement this thing, right? So they get handed over to delivery teams, the development teams, and they say, all right, here's everything I want. Let me know when you're done. So I go away, right? They're trying to read and interpret everything I wrote down, in these large pages, and they come back and they deliver something to me, and it's like, it sort of looks something like what I want, but it's nothing like what I wrote in the document, right? And then you just go round and round and round and round, and it basically says, well, this is what I thought you meant in the document, right? And so that method is called the Waterfall method, right? So I build a requirement, then I give it to, delivery team. Delivery team goes ahead and develops something, then they go ahead and test it. And when they say it's all done, then they come back to the customer and says, here, I'm ready, I'm done. What do you think? Right? You'll see that a lot in department events. Somebody who is in the government.
Well, I've
Right?
been there also.
Yeah, so I mean, you see that method used a lot in the government, right? Which is also why government programs are so costly.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the reasons. There's lots of other reasons,
Yeah.
but the government does that a lot to separate intellectual property handoff too. So I mean, sometimes there's good reasons to do it. But when in this day and age of innovation and trying to do things faster, better, cheaper, right, and get to the market, things like that, really that's where these Agile methods come into play. Right? So, and just kind of talking about how an Agile project management methodology is different than the Waterfall method. It's really focused on, we get a team together rather than saying, here I got this developer, here I got this DBA, and here I got this operations guy, right? Thou shalt do your own little job, right? It's basically, I got a team of 3 people, we're going to get together and we're going to solve this problem, right? So it's basically your collaboration, small team, and things like that. Right? Focus on work that's done, classifying only the work that's done about when you have something to actually show your customer, right? So that document that we spent, 6 months building, that 40-page document deliverable, if you've achieved nothing, right, except created 40 pages of document. The Agile method, the Agile approach is you really have achieved nothing. You haven't achieved anything until you have something that you can bring back to your customer and say, is this what you mean? Right? So that feedback loop there. So some of the core practices, we're gonna kind of dive into each one of these practices a little bit deeper. Again, the whole team concept, so we get everybody together, you know, kind of break down the areas of roles. Right? When you start looking at some of these agile methods and the agile tools in place, they don't have roles of, say, a developer, an architect, a system administrator, a business analyst. There are, basically, we call them team members, right? Because team members all get together and try to solve the problem. We have planning at multiple levels, so you'll see these things that we call backlogs a lot, right? So the way we manage backlogs and treat backlogs essentially is a way to deal with the inability to forecast the plans that span multiple months, right? Short delivery cycle, so we try to get things done in small buckets of time that achieve, you know, incremental value with every cycle. Tracking progress, we'll talk about this. You know, it's not filling out status reports and stuff like that. There's a byproduct of operating this way, and your progress is kind of just apparent by just, you know, operating this way. Customer feedback, so, you know, interacting with your stakeholders and your person that you're delivering that system to on a regular basis, right? Or having that person that represents the business, you know, to get that feedback. And then finally is retrospective. So you've heard of lessons learned, right? Doing some sort of lessons learned. That's really all retrospective is. Agile teams tend to do it way more frequent than at the end of the project when they're all done. Right? They do it at major milestones, and they say, what did we learn over the last, you know, 6 weeks? Right? How can we apply what we learned to the next 6 weeks? Right? So they apply the thought pattern of continuous improvement continuously. Right? It's not continuous improvement once a year. Right?
So would you say this is similar to what the Japanese call the Kaizen method?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. So a lot of those, the Kaizen method comes in play here. Right?
How you doing?
Hi, Beverly. We started without you.
Yeah.
That's okay, that's okay, that's the plan.
All right, so the first practice, whole team. As we talked about, you know, the other thing that happens with this whole team is they tend to be self-organized. So you can imagine, you know, if we all got together and we had an application right or some project to go deliver on, right? There are 2, 4, 6, 8. There's 8 of us, right? We could pretty much in maybe a couple of days figure out, you know, who's good at doing certain skills and who struggles with certain skills. We can learn from each other rather quickly, right? And we're also co-located. We can network together, and we can start building up our over here the word team flow, right? So basically, we're going to have a rhythm to how this team operates, right? So it's called team flow. When you get into big applications, you typically have more than 8 people working on it, right? So what happens is you have like these groups of 5 to 10 people that are going to go off and solve a major problem of that project, right? So yeah, these basically these self-organizing teams that get together, right? And so for large projects, you'll have multiple teams kind of self-forming. Says, all right, great, we're going to go after this release in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it's going to be, and this team's going to solve this problem, this team's going to solve that problem, rather than saying, we got a group of developers that work on development stuff, that then talk to DBAs and make change requests for database needs and stuff like that. Scrum is the most common agile method you see out there. There's a couple others, test-driven development, XP, right? The reason I think Scrum is probably the most used in the marketplace is because it's one of the few that you can actually go get a certification to get, right? Strangely enough, rather than it's the credentials of the method, it's because it has a certification program, right? So what happens, there's good things out of Scrum, but a lot of customers say, well, it's kind of missing a few things, right? Especially when you get in software engineering, there's a practice of doing continuous integration, so doing a nightly build, or when I do a check-in, build the system for me, right? That's not even part of the Scrum process. Right? Like I said, the Agile methods really are about project management, techniques.
Now, does Scrum have a meaning, or is it just a term that?
Some people say that it's related to, rugby. Scrum.
Oh, okay,
And other people say it has no correlation. So, it's one of those things where, does it really matter? Anyway, so when you get into the Agile Scrum, this is actually a good picture because it kind of lays out the whole method of how a Scrum team operates. It first starts with what we call product backlog or release backlog. So these are all the things that your customer wants or you're trying to build this product for, right? Every one of these items is what we'll call a story. We'll talk about stories here in a minute, right? But the other thing about this product backlog is it sits there, think of it as it's like a garbage can, right? And it's got paper stacked all the way up in the garbage can. So I say, great, we're going to work on the next 5 things. So I'm going to grab the top 5 things. So we're grabbing the top 5 things off of this list. As the team goes off and they do more development, what happens is people will want the system to do something else, a change to the project, right? What they do is they come in, they need to make the deposit into the garbage can. Right? So somebody needs to come in here and make sure, well, okay, that request that came in really is kind of middle priority, so it goes in the middle of the stack. Right? Because what happens is the Scrum team actually relies on a prioritization of this list of things they want to do. Because when they're off doing this, they don't know anything about what's down here. Right? They're focused on getting that set of high priority capabilities for the next release in the working system, so we can interact with our customer and say, is this what you want? Right? And it's a sliver of the system.
So who decides on the priorities, is it the team or is it the customer? Or is it
You work with the customer, right? And especially for this prioritization of the backlog. When you get down to the sprint backlog, this is where you work with the team. And you say, this seems really complex, right? Or, maybe Beverly's done this before, right? So you can leverage her skills, and even though it's complex, she's got 2 things that she can deal with. So we gotta work out when Beverly can do this work here and it works. Right? So the team worries about how they're gonna work on the sprint backlog. But they're focused. I mean, when they get to this point, they're focused. And they're focused on the deadline of getting to a working system. And as these tasks get completed, you'll see what we'll call velocity, burn down charts, and things like that. These sprints are typically 2 to 4 weeks in duration, right? This is why you see this 30-day sprint cycle. So when you say we're going to go after the sprint, the team has to figure out how much stuff they can get done in a 30-day cycle. Right? And then they put that in their sprint backlog, and then they run. I mean, that's why they call it sprint. Basically, high-focused people running towards the end line, the deadline, and then once about 30 days away. In addition to that 30-day is they have what they call a daily stand-up meeting. It's not a status meeting where you come and get together and you say how things are going. It's all about what I did yesterday, what's blocking my progress today. That's all you care about, right? Just go around the room, like, anything blocking you guys? Nope. We'll go back to work, right? We let the indicators of how well we're progressing on the sprint backlog, right? If we're making good progress, these things are just going to be taken off, and we'll be using our progress indicators. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's another way to look at it from a release planning standpoint, right? So if I got a big complex project I'm trying to deal with, I do need, everybody asks, great, I told you what I want, when you're going to be done, right? So I have to give them some sort of sense of, some indication of when I'm going to be complete, right? So this is a good picture, is like, okay, great, here's what I know you asked me for, right? The things you're asking me for, software development, we would like to think it's a straight line of progression, but it really isn't. It's basically a meandering, right, of how close I am to what the customer's asked for. And that's why it's important to get this customer feedback, so you can continue to stay on the path of customer wants, right? Anyway, when you have your initial plan, trying to figure out how I'm gonna take this team and the resource allocations for, wow, say this is a year-long project. For me to predict the date I'm gonna be done based off a year-long project on all the capability, when I don't know what my team's capability to deliver is, how much time should I spend planning to do that work? Probably very little. Okay? Which is another capability of Agile. It basically says, let's break things apart. Let's only focus good amount of planning work for those 4 to 6 weeks effort, right? And then every 4 to 6 weeks, we get this thing we call velocity. So we know our capability to deliver on that chunk of code or chunk of project every 4 to 6 weeks, right? We do 2 of them. We kind of get, it's almost like, what's your miles per hour to get me from here to the bridge, right? I can kind of estimate how long it's going to take me to get to the bridge based on how fast my team can go. Here's an example of what a release backlog might look like. I'll show you this slide too as well. Okay, so this is the backlog, this is the release backlog. Each one of these items is what we'll call a story. Stories get broken down, and stories have points to it. We'll talk about that in a second. Stories typically get broken down into tasks, right? If I say stories is a feature or capability that I want my application or project to deliver, and then I might have tasks to say, well, I got to set up the infrastructure, I got to install this piece of software, right? Those are just tactical tasks that I need to get on somebody's to-do list, but they all support a story. So that's why you see the hierarchy relationship between a story and a task. Right? Can't really see that very well, but very complex stories that have lots of complexity to them. People will usually might group those together in what we call an epic. Right? But think about it. You almost think of this as a book, right? A story is a paragraph, and an epic's a chapter. Right? So an epic has multiple stories in it. And like we were saying, the relative progress indicators, just the fact that you complete work here, and say when I'm done with this task, my progress indicators help me figure out if I'm going to make my deadline or not going to make my deadline. Okay, so stories. When you try to figure out what stories are, you have to figure out the level of complexity. And so we have these things called story points. Story points are completely unitless. They have no unit to them. I've actually heard customers call them headaches, right? Right. So because you can relate, it's like, what's my headache rate? Well, really, the way you use story points, it's basically this team's idea of what's the level of complexity for me to take that feature and implement that feature. Okay.
Now, is there a limit on the numbers? Should we make it any number?
They usually follow like a series of, it's a Fibonacci series, of 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, whatever the Fibonacci series is, right? So basically, I mean, if you want, the team got together and we said, oh, this is a 10, whatever is a 10. Something that's a 1 means it's going to be relatively easy. If we have something that's 100, it's like the whole thing at, stop the bus, right? We're going to probably break that one down into multiple stories. Right? So, I mean, just that little simple exercise right there kind of helps you understand the power of a unitless system. Because some people will say, well, how long is it going to take you? Right? So it's not about how long it's going to take you. It's a reflection of how complex this thing is that we're going to have to work on. Okay. So how much time should you spend on estimating, right? Especially trying to estimate, a multiple month project, you shouldn't be spending a lot of time estimating that. But for the next 6 months, or the next sprint, the next 6-week cycle, you should spend some good time on it to, make sure that estimate's good. This is just kind of a curve. I personally have experienced this in the things that I do. It's like, if I get some good focused time on kind of organizing my thoughts and bring things together, it's almost like that first half hour doing that activity, it gives me a tremendous amount of value, right? And then it takes me another 6 hours to refine it, right? Right, so how much value am I spending on doing that activity? Could I be spending those 6 hours somewhere else doing something more of higher value? All right, so when we get into these essentially what we call work task or work items, Agile teams will even call these requirements. Right? They're called user stories. A lot of times these user stories, they basically are just articulated. You ever hear use cases? Right? Use cases have an actor and what the system is supposed to do, what's the alternative flow, and things like that. There's a standard or a pattern for how you define a use case, right? This is a simpler view of a use case. And user stories are written as the person that interacts with whatever this application is or project doing. So it's written from a perspective of, I want this thing to do something for me, right? So the first, and it's really powerful when you think of it that way, because it says as, right, you can define, this is not, as Ed, I do this. It's like, well, what is Ed's role in interacting with the system, right? So think about it as driving a car, right? As a driver of a car, I sit down and I turn my key on, and I want the radio to respond to me within 30 seconds. If that happened, I'd be in a hand the car on it, right? When I turn the car, I want the radio to be instantly on for me, right? So the perspective of a user story is very important for the role that's written. Because, as a passenger of a car, we're going to have different responsibilities. If you think about it from a system perspective, right? As a user of a Google, application, right? I want it to be user-friendly and responsive to me in, so many seconds, right? So user stories are quite powerful to convey a lot of information in a very, short paragraph. Some examples of that, right? So this is, think about a banking application, right? Banks are all about, as a customer, what's the customer want to do? He wants to put his money, make sure it's safe, and he wants to get it out. And, as a student interacts with an enrollment system, and we're, a teacher, instructor, admission counselor, you're going to interact with that system differently. So if you think about these user stories, from that perspective, to help you articulate requirements of the system, a lot of things we're seeing in the market is people are extrapolating that and saying, why can't I do it for writing verification tests, right? Or defining the performance of the system that I expect. And that's essentially what to do. So it's like this, as a system administrator, I want this thing to support 500 current users with performance is X, Y, and Z. So these user stories can be extrapolated and, outside of just, user requirements, they can be written as, technical specifications and, tests. Right? Epics are kind of just story, very simple concept. You get stories have points to them, and you say, well, I have some really complex thing, and I need to kind of group it together. I'm just going to group it together in an epic. Right? So an epic's going to be like my parent, and I'm going to have a couple different stories, maybe 2, 3, 4 different stories underneath that support that epic. Right? The other thing that epics allow you to do is basically say, okay, for this release cycle, the next 4 to 6 weeks, I'm going to deliver you this capability. Right, so that's going to be a story. But if I'm going to say, let's just say we take a banking application. I'm going to make it available for you to do online banking via your mobile phone. Right? Well, the first thing I need to do is make sure you can do some online banking. Right? So my epic is the online banking for mobile phone. My first story might be an online banking application. The second one might be building a mobile app to interface with that system. Right? So those are two stories that support that epic. As we talked about, these release plans will be in 4 to 6 weeks long, right? The team's working on getting work done, and every one of these stories that they complete all have story points, right? So one thing you can do is, at the end of a release, each one of these bars reflects a release cycle. At the end of the release cycle, you can say, yep, we got these 4 stories done, but we kind of plan to do these 8 stories, right? But we know we got these 4 stories done. I just add up the story points of those, because remember, story points reflected at the team's consensus of complexity. So I just add up all the story points, and I get a bar for that first iteration. I do that another time, I get another bar, same thing. Well, what happens after, you typically get 2 and you're good, right? The 2, and then basically says, okay, great. For our third iteration, I know this team is capable to deliver 15 story points. So when we go back to that product release log, when I say, what are we going to do next sprint? If I pull out more than 15 points of work, I know we're going to have struggles to meet that deadline. Right? So rather than saying, how much is this stuff going to cost, and how many man-days is it going to take, and what's the grant chart and all that stuff, it's really simple to say, once I've got my team velocity, I can figure out how much work I can pull out of that bucket, and I have some pretty good confidence I'm going to deliver it to it in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Right? So that's the concept. You can actually be much more nimble and responsive because you're measuring the team's progress and the team's ability to deliver work much faster. Does that make sense? Okay. So velocity charts, as you see that up there, we just explained it. The other thing we have is we'll call a burn down chart. So the burn down chart basically says, if you think about that release plan, or that release bucket, that's got all my stories I want to get done. If I add up all those story points, that's what my end goal is to say the project's going to be 100 story points of work. Every iteration we finish up, 10 story points, 2 story points, 8 story points, right? This is basically an indication of my burn down rate, right? What happens on a typical project, though, is change happens, right? People come in, you want more stuff, right? So, you can see this line, this one goes like this, and goes up, right? So, as you get further down the line, and get closer to a final system, that's where you start getting more feedback from your customers, and you say, I want to make some modifications to it. Well, those modifications are change requests, right? As they go in the bucket, it just basically increased my bucket, so your total story points rises. And this is just an indication of progress. Anybody heard of earned value? Earned value is a method that came from DOD, and I'll say, it's not sophisticated and complex, but there's a lot of math in it. And it scares people to say, basically give you the same thing of relative progress, but everything's got to be, okay, you have to tell me exactly how many hours you spent on this thing. I use that to estimate how much future things going to be. And everybody gets a little, it's like, especially now that we're in the world of, I hire contractors to come in here, right, and I pay them off of the number of hours they spent on this project, right, and they end up using task management to say, well, I got to make sure all of my task work aligns with what I've turned in my time card, and then it distorts actually how much time you spent on that task, right? Because we know people get distracted in their work, right? You have meetings, you have water cooler conversations, right? How much time did they actually spend working on the task at hand? So that's another reason why story points and time tracking kind of, it kind of removes that problem tool. The daily stand-up meeting talked about, again, it's not a status meeting where you get together and you say, hey, how's the team doing, right? I use those progress indicators and give me an indication of how well the project's performing. This is all about, we get together on a daily basis, 15 minutes, and they actually call it a stand-up meeting because there's no chairs and people are actually standing up, right? They physically get together and they stand up, right? If you sit down, you get comfortable, and the meeting goes longer, so that's why you agree it's stand-up. Anyway, the whole idea of that is, what did you guys get done yesterday? Anything blocking you from making progress today? And you just go around the team, right? And that's it. It's like, I'm being blocked by such and such, and I need some help. Great. Stay here. We'll work out the resolution for that. Figure out if you can unblock you, or if you can work on another task, right? A lot of times they'll be, say, no, I'm blocked, but I know that blocker will be, that blocking item, it'll show up on Friday. It's Tuesday. So what do? I don't sit around and say, wait till Tuesday and then wait until Friday, right? What I do is as a team member, I go back to our sprint backlog, and I go grab a new item that I think I can make some progress on. And I'm gonna start working on it. But I know on Friday, I'll be unblocked and I can continue on another one.
How do you prevent yourself, like, if you went back, and now what if that project starts to take too much time?
Yeah.
And then you're not, now Friday comes along.
Well, it's not a project, it's work.
Your work, so that work takes longer than you thought, now you get this other one.
Yep. So that should show up. I mean, and that's again, we deal with that in the daily stand-up meeting, right? As I go up, I took this task, I thought it was gonna be 2 days of work. I go up and do it, it's like, hey, wait, time out, we need to re-estimate this, and it's not 2 points, it's 20 points, right? If something like that happens, and you kind of work it out, and you say, do we need a replanning estimate? A lot of times what happens, they say, you know what, go put a new item in the backlog. Well, what can you get done? What kind of progress can you make on this? Because you're already in it, right? You can make some sort of progress on it. You're not gonna do the whole thing anymore. It was way too big. So we create a new item for the backlog, throw the backlog, but you continue on for maybe what you can make progress for this iteration. We already talked about this. This is decomposition of stories typically is down in the task. So this is I have a task to go do, and it's probably going to take me half a day, right? So I'll put in there that this task can take me 4 hour day to work on. So when you get down into the actual iteration, so those progress points we looked at is basically because here's a big release that's got multiple iterations, right? How well is the team progressing towards that major release? When I get down into the single iteration, remember the iteration is 4 to 6 weeks. I apply the same techniques, right? But the things I'm applying in the techniques are, this breakdown chart. Every one of these indicators, this is every day. So this thing changes every day. Remember in our daily stand-up meeting, we're trying to make progress every single day. Right? So that's the other reason why you want to make sure your tasks you're assigned to on here are, this is something that's going to take me 60 hours of work. Right? That's too big of a task. We need to break that thing down into something that makes sense. A lot of Agile teams like to, they have a lot of visual cues. I don't have an index card, but everybody knows an index card looks like, right? So a lot of things, Agile teams don't even use any tools. What they'll use is these index cards. They'll take a wall of a conference room, and they'll break it into sections, right? This is actually a good example here. That says, here's my backlog, right? Here's the things that we're working on today, and here's the stuff that's done. Right? And you see these things got, there's delineations between each group. They'll take these index cards or sticky notes, and they'll actually write the user story on them, and they'll put them right here on the board. So you walk into the conference room, and you'll see sometimes the conference room got these areas, and they'll go ahead and have all the stage stories, and you're thinking, how well we're performing. Well, in the stand-up meeting, you say, you know, are we done with that one? We'll take this guy and move it over and we're done. So a lot of agile teams, they don't use any technology to help manage their projects, right?
So is that why Google and like Quicken Loans, they have their walls set up in a way you use those dry erase
Yeah.
directly on the walls,
Yeah,
so it helps them with their project planning?
yep. Have you been in a Google office?
Not Google, but Quicken is real close to the Google.
Yeah, so I think Quicken and Flow, they follow a lot of agile methods, yeah. If you notice their offices are open, right? And the reason is like if I have a cube and I'm sitting in a cube, it's like I'm gonna be sitting here. But if I'm on an open cube, I'm gonna be more apt to just sit down and say, hey, can you help me with this problem? Or actually, one of the techniques not used in Scrum, but it's used in XP, Extreme Programming, is called pair programming. When I did my master's degree at Carnegie Mellon, one of the projects we had to do, you know, the degree was awesome, and we got to experience all these different things we did in software engineering. One of the things we experimented with was taking this concept of pair programming. So I sat down, remember I was an embedded software programmer, and I sat down with a guy that was a deep Java programmer. And we're working on a J2E application. Neither one of us has ever built one of those. He has a different set of skills and I had a different set of skills. We sat down together, and man, would tell you the learning that happened so dynamically in just a couple days. You know, he was learning from me, I was learning from him. You know, had different opinions, and we were always, you know, work out. But we realized that it was that learning, approach. It was just something you never experienced before, ever. Pair programming concept also has, if you have personality conflicts, right? They come right to the head, and they ain't working. So you got to change it. A couple of the last practices with Agile. Again, so what we kind of walk you through is, you know, planning for releases. What do you do for measuring progress? What's the story? Story points and things like that. And when I'm done with my iteration, the critical thing with when you know you're done is you actually you're doing a show and tell. Right? Some customers actually schedule a meeting, they call it show and tell. Right? Then we call it, you know, project demo or something. And that's where you're taking what you built and you're showing it to your customer or your customer representative. And you're saying, this is what we told you we delivered. What do you think about what you see? Right? Walk them through it, and it's a demonstration, right? You tell them, this is what I understood your requirements to be. This is how we implement it in the system. What do you think, right? And you get instant feedback right there, and it's kind of, it's narrowly focused so that you are only, showing them that sliver of iteration, that capability to release an iteration. So they're short, they're very short. It's not like you're doing a full product demo where, hey, I got 6 months into this work, right? And now I deliver something to you and you say, that's not what I wanted. And then everybody's just like, man, I just spent 6 months on that. Right? It's, okay, you know what, I spent a week on that. I don't care. You want me to change it? Let's go. Right? So it's actually, it's a good team model to kind of be more responsive because a lot of people in this space, they have a lot of pride in what they build, right? It's a challenging world, and knowledge workers, they love to be challenged, but they also like to have a lot of pride in their work. And so it's like, if I spend 6 months on something and somebody tells me it's crap, I'm kind of dejected, right? But if I spend a week in it and somebody tells me it's crap, it's like, well, how can I make it better? Right? Because I can make it better next week. And that's really the mentality of the Agile approach. And lastly is the retrospective. So at the end of the demo, the iteration, you come back and you say, okay, team, what did we learn over that last 4 to 6 weeks? Right? How can we learn from that last 4 to 6 week iteration and apply some new techniques and new methods to our next 6 weeks, right? We say maybe, you know what, we didn't really test the thing as well as what we wanted to, right? So maybe how can we build some test automation into our Agile terminology, every one of these methods have similar practices, maybe a little bit different terminology. Nothing critical, just kind of be aware that, they all essentially mean the same thing. Okay. So that's it for kind of agile techniques, agile methods. Any questions on kind of what I showed you?
Is there any project you couldn't really apply this to? Can this be applied to every single project? Building projects, building a bridge, a car? Is there anything that really doesn't work out well to apply this technique to? Doesn't work well for any type of thing? You have to have a physical. Or
Yeah, where I've seen it where it doesn't work well is highly governed contractual obligations, right? Where I'm going to source you some sort of project, and I'm holding you to a fixed price.
Oh, it's like what Ford does there.
Yeah. I mean,
GM.
what they end up doing is those teams, they might apply agile techniques, but the business risk they've just taken on is they say, well, we've done something similar like that, and we estimate the cost of that, then they source it, but it's a fixed price, right? So you're not necessarily agile with, like Ford,
Mhm.
but you apply agile techniques internally, right? And you, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, what about the size of the team?
Yeah, so the kind of the rule of thumb is get groups of people together that are about 5 to 10, right? If you get bigger than 10, it's hard to figure out how to actually have an effective stand-up meeting, manage the conflicts and the blockers that's going on, right? Agile development can scale, and it does scale. We do it with an IBM. It has a major application that's using 5 or 6 different teams together, all using the agile techniques. Right? But these relative, remember I said the self-forming teams, keep those about 5 to 10. You can scale up, scale down, but that's kind of the rule of thumb.
So kind of like if you're designing a game, you'd have your graphics team,
Yep.
this team, that team.
Yeah.
And would all the teams meet, or just you have a representative for each team meet as a stand-up to let them know they're there?
Yeah, so usually each one of those they have their own Scrum Master, right? And then the Scrum Master, again, everybody's using the same techniques and stuff like that. So if someone that's on the graphics interface has a blocking item from, I don't know, the guy has, controller, right? They're using the same tools, they're using the same techniques. They will come in and put a blocking item that says, I need this graphics controller done before I can finish my gaming, just the X button to do this. And they'll just give a blocking item to the graphics guy. They know what it means, right? I said, oh, even though I'm on a different team, I'm actually blocking progress from another team. Right, and that comes up in their stand-up. Each one of their stand-up is say that.
I'm wondering how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, that's you'll read about scaling agile. In fact, this poster kind of talks about it too, scaling agile. The whole thing with scaling agile is typically gets into, well, I can't apply agile to large projects. Well, yeah, you can. You just kind of need to take the techniques and kind of mold them a little bit, right? Scrum is all about a very simple project. Everybody's doing the same thing, but you can scale up some of those techniques and just kind of tweak them a little bit. And you deal with multiple teams kind of operating the same way. Okay. All right.
Has anyone here had any experience or ever heard this concept before?
I've heard in automotive, it's very similar to TQM and what the Japanese call Kaizen, kind of their way of project management. It almost sounds like they've taken the best of all of them and kind of combined a lot of those techniques.
I've worked with might have been a predecessor. Remember the old Chad and Brad sessions we used to have? Where we tried to do something.
Yeah. It takes a similar concept to that. Basically, I need to deliver something so I can get somebody's feedback kind of quick, right?
Yeah, and that's what I remember. The goal was produce something. That gets fed the next cycle.
Yeah,
And you determine that it's over when there's nothing else to add to it.
right. Yeah.
Oh, you run out of money.
That's it.
All right, so IBM's a big company, 400,000 people around the world. Probably a $100 billion company. I left the automotive industry 7 years ago, worked at Ford and Visteon, where I was really building really cool stuff, right? Building products. It was really, I hated leaving the industry because I love the products that we build, and part of that, my team was part of doing that. But I wanted to go do something different. So I come over to IBM, do technical sales, thinking, it's more of a consulting kind of job that I can stay local. I kind of just get my feet wet. So I leave the automotive industry, where I just know I'm kind of a cost to engineering. That's all I really know I am, right? Come over to IBM, and it's like, I'm part of technical sales. I know I'm part of the revenue generation side of IBM. And actually, you follow this all the way back up to what Sam Palm was on, our CEO was saying, where's our company going? It's like, I never even thought I could do that in the automotive industry, right? So, I mean, IBM is a massive company that's run as a whole bunch of little tiny companies, right? And they're pretty well ran. Anyway, this perspective that I'm showing you is we build lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of software, right? You'll see that kind of the evolution of the IBM software group. So we have over 26,000 software developers. And this is the age chart, so probably there's more than this right now. Okay, 26,000 software developers span around the globe at different locations. Some are sites of 10, and some are sites of 1,000. This is kind of a, if you look at the progression of what IBM has acquired, built since 1995. These are all of the software companies that IBM has bought. I came in around, I think it was up here. I was amazed. It was really cool. After 2 years here, I kind of said, man, you seem to buy a lot of stuff, right? And I went back and somebody told me the stat, and it was for the last 2 years, back then, it was we were acquiring a company at a rate of one a week. They weren't that big company. I mean, some of them were big companies. Now they're, they bring them in IBM, and we can go global with them, and we can, basically take this little company that had some really, really innovative ideas, and we can take it and spread it to the world. So anyway, with this acquisition, we're bringing in new software developers, building new capability, right? So just imagine the level of complexity that IBM had to deal with all these different software teams and how they're distributed and how they need to be multiple time zones and independent products that need to be integrated and stuff, right? Just the level of complexity that we had to deal with in our software labs was unfathomable at times. So the IBM Software Group transformation back in 1980, so we followed the waterfall method, right? Built some requirements, give it to the delivery to development teams, they would do something. We deliver to our customer comes back and buys our product, we don't buy the product. In the 1990s, we moved to an iterative process, right? Those iterations still were long, right? And now we're at Agile and Lean. So that, I don't forget Lean, right? The concept of Lean and Lean process improvement is really, when you got any process, you basically want to try to eliminate the waste. So find your process steps you're dealing with, and what steps along that journey don't add any value to your end product, right? So that's the whole concept of Lean, basically. And that's a lot of what Agile teams do in the retrospective, right? They say, yep, we've delivered this product. What did we do that really didn't add any value to what we were doing, right? Let's eliminate that. So that's the whole idea of Lean. Okay. So in 2006, the Agile journey within IBM Software Group started. Lots of different workshops. We trained up people for learning Agile, and we had 70% teams using the Agile concept and techniques somewhere, right? The other interesting thing about IBM Software Group and their software development practices, they don't mandate our software development teams to use IBM software. Right?
That's interesting.
So it's not a mandate, but it's quite interesting, right? It actually keeps our teams on the edge that they need to build product that their teammates want to use. Right? I think it's brilliant, right? If you're forced to use something, the team that's, building it for you, they might get a little lackadaisical, right? You got to use it anyway. I don't really need to make you happy, right? But if I got to make you happy, I'm gonna put a little extra effort to make sure I build a quality product, right?
And have your teams develop their own software?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yep, they built their own stuff to do their own job if they don't have anything within IBM to facilitate it. And IBM uses a ton of open source as well. We embed a lot of open source into our products. So over that journey, kind of if you look at, the whole reason to go Agile is all about improving the business and improving the bottom line. And what does Agile do? It allows you to do more with less. Right? It helps build better quality. So this is just a simple chart, and what they did is it kind of said, okay, how much revenue does the software group generate, and how many? You got 26,000 engineers, right? So if you look at basically just amortized revenue generation by their software that we're building versus the people that are building it, right? And over the Agile transformations, the revenue per head count goes up. This is effective, this is resource cost. Okay, so the key thing was the effective revenue generation per head count just went up as well as with the Agile transformation. Okay. And this is just another way to look at that chart, right? The revenue generation for our software group going up, and then, typically what you see is the amount of resources it takes to keep track with that type of revenue growth, it kind of goes past, right? Oh, we have just the opposite, because we have the Agile transformation going at the same time. Okay. So one of the key things with the Agile transformation that made, again, like I said, IBM software development doesn't force software development teams to use certain software. One of the enabling technologies that were used as part of the Agile transformation we're talking about is rational team concert. Anybody heard of IBM Rational? Yeah? What do you know about IBM Rational?
Not a lot.
Very little.
Yeah?
Like I said, I just installed it, I don't.
Yeah. So IBM Rational isn't, we actually have a product family of about 200 different products. Right? Our sweet spot is all about project management, software development activities, things like that. Our flagship product for Agile is called Rational Team Concert. But like I said, IBM doesn't force development labs to use technology, right? It's almost like if you build something of value, your teammates will want to use it. So Team Concert was the #1 virally most adopted piece of technology in all of IBM's history because of its capability to help Agile teams, deliver and collaborate in a worldwide manner. It's also one of the reasons why we're rated so well by external analysts. And there's actually a free version of it out there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you go to www.jazz.net, it's jazz.net is actually the development hub. So if you go to the dashboard, you want to see how the Team Concert team is developing code. You actually see their dashboard right on jazz.net. So we're developing and using our technology in the open. We're getting the whole idea is get customer feedback quicker, and we'll make the product better. Right? So everybody that's using and installing our software, Rational Team Concert, we're at the dashboard, and you can see some of the stuff we're doing. Right? Anyway, the free version of that is limited to 10 users. Right? So if you have a shop that's got 5 to 10 different developers, you can get Universities, right? Universities can take it and download it. A lot of universities do project work for their classes. They can set up this team concert for them. Okay. What Team Concert has to offer, essentially, these capabilities, work item management, so that's stories that we're talking about, the task, the ethics, things like that. Those are what we call stories. Source code management. If you're doing software development, you're typically dealing with Java files, and, source code files. So we check it in, you have place to check in code, check out code, label it, right? Has an integrated build system. Right? So what this technology kind of evolved from was best practices that Rational's learned over 20, 25 years of developing software-intensive systems and helping customers develop software-intensive systems. And we said, how can we make it simpler? Right? And so all these pieces of the puzzle basically come together when you're building software systems. I have defects that I'm tracking. I have a source code management system, checking in code, checking out code, and I have some sort of build automation that's coming, right? So that we talk about the daily checking. So when somebody checks in code, it automatically builds it for you. So it's all built in Team Concert. And if you guys want, I can deliver, I'll show you just a kind of real quick demonstration of Team Concert. So we were talking about, when the Agile teams are running, they've got all these indicators and burn down charts and progress indicators. So Team Concert dashboard kind of, extracts all that information, brings it up to the dashboard, so somebody can say, rather than you sitting down and what's the status report, the status report's live, so nobody's writing status reports anymore, right? It's like, somebody comes over and says, how's the project going? It's like, go check out my website. Right? Get back to work. I'm going back to work, okay?
Sounds familiar.
Well, here's there's a live indicator. Here's a velocity chart we talked about, right? So this team right now, there's 52. So for sprint number 1, we did about 50 points of work. Sprint number 2, we're doing about 52, points of work, right? So as we get it ready, we're going to start working on sprint number 3. If we go to the backlog and we pull out 100 points of work, the team can say, we can't do all that stuff. We need to kind of scale down what we think we can do to somewhere around 50, right? Because we have confidence in our ability to deliver 50 points in the next sprint.
So how does this software get connected to what you're working on, with your code and all the stuff you're working on?
So if I come down here, I'm going to sign it myself. So manage that through what we call work items. Stories are work items, epics are work items, and tasks are work items, and defects are work items. So out of the box, we support the Scrum template. And these are all things, these items right here, defect, story, task, epics. These are all things that's in the Scrum, Agile method. But we also have another template that's for traditional customers that, think of risk and issues and risk mitigation and defects and things like that, right? So there's still people out there that aren't applying, Agile techniques. If you give them this template, they say, what's the story, right? And it just confuses them. So we actually have Agile template as well as a traditional method. Anyways, but to answer your question is, every one of these work items has, you can't really see it, it got cut off, but it's owned by. So I end up taking these things and I assign them to individuals, right? If I was assigned to this one, I can come in here and I can status this work to say, right now it's new. When I start working on it, I'll come in here and I'll say, I start working on this. Okay. If I'm a software engineer, there's a plugin, so most of our customers are either using Eclipse or Visual Studio, right? There's plugins for both of those worlds, so that right in their native integrated development environment, they call them IDEs, right? There's a task list right sitting there, right there. And what he sees, so if I logged in Visual Studio, this is now, it just popped up in my task list. Right, so I say, I'm gonna start working on this one, so I go check out the code. When I check the code back in, I have to put a reason for why I just made that code change. Well, here's the reason. Okay. And then there's an audit trail that happens with that checkout, check-in, and it becomes, well, you can see this link over here. It basically says, you change this code over here. The reason you change that code is because you're either fixing this defect or implementing this task or feature or story, right?
So when you download the software, you have to do some things to configure it, tell it what servers everybody's working on and that kind of stuff too?
What servers?
Yeah, I mean, when you're, in the work environment, I'm connected to a network, and that network, is connected to servers,
Oh,
which
yeah,
gives me
okay.
my SAN,
Yeah, so this is, you have to install this somewhere, right? It's a application server and a database.
Okay.
The free version has Tomcat and Derby, so a lot of times for the free version, small teams, all you need is a modern laptop to run it. And if you notice here, what I'm using here is I'm using a browser, right? So I'm logged into the system via a browser.
Via internet browser.
Yep. I'm actually hitting I have a cloud server. I don't even know where it is.
Oh,
But it's somewhere not here. It's not on my machine.
okay, so they
It's over in
try,
internet land.
so if there was like, say, 6 programmers and they repaired, and they had 3 machines, how do those 3 machines all work in the same sandbox and connect?
Yeah, so there's actually only one server. So there's one team concert server.
One of the team's laptop would act as a server?
Yep.
Okay.
Or as you say, you could put this in the cloud, in
Yeah, put it in the cloud.
Amazon or Azure servers or something then,
Yep.
or IBM.
Yeah, we
cloud services.
have partners that host the stuff and, do stuff. Yeah. We have one cloud. There's lots of cloud options too.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to go too deep into the demonstrations and stuff like that, but I'll go as deep as you guys want. Right? But the whole idea is these dashboards and reports and stuff like this is all just a byproduct of me doing my work in the system, right? And there's lots of things. So essentially what we're doing is we're leveraging capability is rather than making measurement, giving me status reports is that's a Friday afternoon job I got to do. It's a byproduct of you using the system. Some of the things you can get out of this. I look at one of the builds that we did. Yeah, okay. So if you think about, typical software development activities are going on, fixing defects and new features, checking in code, checking out code, checking in code, checking out code, right? And when I'm ready to go, I build the system somehow, make files, ant files, but I have a release engineer build it, right? Using T-Concert, you have this build engine integrated inside of it. And this is the results of a build that we did on this team. What comes along the ride for this build is I get to see, here's all the things I fixed in this build. Right, so here's this work item. We don't have any really hardcore Java developers here, do we? Oh, okay.
Patrick couldn't make, he's up there and he's a hardcore.
And one of the things they do is they'll do integrated automated unit test. J-unit is typically done, right? So if you have J-unit test built into your testing today, you come in here and you say, here's the results of all of my J-unit tests off of all this code that I just built. Right? So it's automatically integrated into the build. Like I said, the work items. This work item here, again, it's a byproduct of me doing work with the system. So I go and look at this task, and what we have here is just remember that task we just looked at, right? Before, this is a different task. It just basically says, hey, I need to implement this capability. So when they were in their Visual Studio or Eclipse environment, he checked out code, and the reason he checked out that code, he just said it was just because of this task. And so this is everything that's left behind. Right? So you got this nice audit trail, especially in this day and age where basically says, hey, everything needs to be locked down, and I need to control what gets released to production. I need to know what's been changed from this point to that point. The tight audit trail, the reason for why you made a change to the application is really important. Right? And what we see customers doing today is they got a whole bunch of manual processes and checks and balances, and they go check with Bob, making sure Bob agrees with making all these changes, and then Bob checks with Sally, and Sally has the final approval, right? And the reason they do that is because they can't have a complete audit trail here that's integrated into some tools here. So that's one of the major things that we have for customers. It's like, really, we can do that? So, quite powerful. I'd show you the coolest feature of this, but you guys are probably the last time I'm going to have this image. I'm going to reset and reboot and rebuild my whole computer because it's all broken. But one of the coolest features of the Team Concert that doesn't work in my browser right now, this was the screen capture tool. I'm going to try it and see if it does work. So if I have a task or a defect, right, I'm working on a team, and they say, wow, I got a defect. I need to issue a defect log. A lot of times they go take a screen print of something and they copy that into a Word document, right? And they save the Word document in their hard drive, right? And then you got to name it something. Then you got to go over here and upload it and attach it to this record. Team Concert has this integrated this screen capture camera, and it says, it actually, when you run it, it shows up a little camera right on the screen. Now let's just say, I'm going to go to my iGoogle site. Okay. But there's this little screen capture that comes up, and I get to take it right over here and it says, right here, take me a screenshot of that. I capture it, and it automatically just tags it right to the defect. Right, so I've eliminated like these 3 or 4 steps that people typically do. Capture something, put it on a Word document, save the Word document, and then attach it. And it's really kind of just helps with the efficiency of things.
So the tool has roles for different people who would be using the tool. So like as a project manager, I have a different view of the tool,
Yeah,
different access to different things.
Yep, and different responsibilities and different permission. Yep.
Okay.
So for this project I've got, and this is the Agile project, right? So I've got the product owner, Scrum Master, team member, and these are all roles that are familiar with a Scrum. Right? If you wanted to see what these roles are allowed to do, come over here and say, what's a Scrum Master allowed to do here? So a Scrum Master has all these capabilities. And someone's a stakeholder has limited capabilities. So I can control the capabilities just by that without any really heavy-duty configuration of the solution. All right?
What are some of the new features that are being worked on for the software?
Yep, so if you look at So this is a project delivery, kind of capability. For very large programs, they've got multiple projects underneath them, right? So how do we deal with doing cross-project planning when I have something of that complexity, right? So that's some of the stuff that we're, it's coming out. We're actually doing something with GM right now on some of their hybrid vehicles to present at our conference here in a couple of weeks. And it really says they have some really complex teams that get together to do testing out their hybrid vehicle, right? So they got, I think, 100 or so engineers, and they struggle with coordinating all the team's effort, and all the engineers are working on these different vehicles that they have, right? And so that cross-project coordination and planning effort is really challenging and complex. Something like our project server and project, it just fails, okay? And they're leveraging some of the most latest and greatest innovation with Team Concert to solve that problem. Yeah. And in fact, one of the things we're exploring with them is there's mobile applications in the App Store for Team Concert, right? And so, think about this: if I'm in a car trying to do some testing, right? Yep.
Oh, but you're not driving.
No, I am driving because I'm testing.
Right, you're on a track or something.
I'm on a test track. Yeah. So I work for GM. I'm driving down, and so I got some test sequences I got to do, right? So I gotta try and get over this, this road and whatever it is. Or I might be sitting there with the radio, right? Trying to pair my phone with the radio, right? I need to test that my suppliers provided me the right capability to do it. So one of the things we're exploring with them is all you're really doing is task management, right? And it's part of that big plan that you're talking about. And wouldn't it be nice to do task management right here on the phone? Right, so there's a mobile app in the App Store for Team Concert, and we were here, and they would go tweak, hit their spreadsheet and say, yep, I'm done, and then come over to the mobile app and say, yep, I'm done with that. And that gets reflected right on the Team Concert application. Yeah. In fact, I just talked to the guy that built the mobile app just a couple hours ago, because I was actually working with a guy from GM. He says, so tell me what you think of this radio, because this is pre-production and da-da-da-da-da-da. And he showed me, he says, well, it's supposed to be completely intuitive. I'm not going to explain this, how to do it, right? So figure it out. And I was doing something, and I'm thinking, it says menu button, but the menu button's not doing anything, right? He says, it's because that's not the right button. I says, well, the button's labeled wrong. That's my feedback. Because it says menu, I should go to the menu. There's no way I hit the home button. Right? So I told him, so I thought, man, this is pretty cool, because that's the type of testing that's going to be happening where they're going to be interacting with Team Concert. Right? To say, I found a problem with the system. The issue, defect, put it in Team Concert. It's going to be managed by the engineering team, and they're going to try and fix it somewhere. I thought, wouldn't it be really cool if you used that mobile app in your camera and you took a picture of that radio and you attached that picture of the defect and you gave it to Team Concert. So the guy that has to triage this thing actually has a picture of the radio I'm talking about, rather than just saying the menu button's wrong. He actually has a picture of it.
Or serious, da, da, da.
Yeah. That's some of the innovation that we're able to quickly respond to, because we're applying agile techniques in how we develop our systems. So yeah. All right, I could go on for hours on this.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. I'm new to Agile. I'm in the process of working on my PMI Agile certification.
Okay.
Because I think that Agile is going to change the way we work, no matter what you do. And I can see where they're starting to use Agile outside of application development. They're starting to use it to do other things. And the whole concept of it, the fact that it's all about delivering value and make a customer successful quickly and quick to market, that is so exciting to me because, you know, from a project management perspective and IT development, we've been developing software for, what, a long time, and we never get it right. You know, most project developments fail, 70% of them are wrong before they even get delivered.
Right.
And you know, to see that this concept is gonna get us so much closer to being able to deliver software on time, within budget, and the customer loves it.
Yep.
I'm just ecstatic.
Yeah, and then you know, building those skills are very marketable skills.
Yeah.
So that's, I commend you for going and getting your certification because, you know, it's a marketable skill.
Yeah.
A lot of companies are looking for them.
What is even more exciting to me is that I feel like somewhat like an evangelist in that I need to tell folks that your workplace is about to change. This whole concept of Agile, you know, if you want to be part of the team and be a part of what's going on the bleeding edge of things at your company, you need to be able to be a part of an Agile team. And that's not you know, real obvious. It's a personality, it's a relationship building kind of thing that's gotta happen. They gotta want you on the team. They gotta recognize that you have certain skills that they want on this team. Because these teams are so small, you know, that you can easily be excluded. You know, so wake up. I just feel like everybody needs to be aware of this. If you're an IT developer, or you really need to recognize what is about to happen, because it's gonna change your whole world. You know, if you like to sit in the corner and, you know, you don't like working with people, you're gonna be in trouble. I mean, am I missing something on this?
No, no.
What do you think?
Nope.
I just.
I work in my basement and I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it, you know, and I just really need to get folks all aware of it and before it really blows out, because companies are starting to do the transformation. I joined a team with Fannie Mae, and they're doing a major Agile project that is like the most strategic initiative going on in the whole company. And they're doing it using Agile, and they're using IBM teams to do it. And the chances of my getting on one of those teams are low, but they'll get better, you know.
Yeah, if you
got
can
that
speak the language
certification.
and
I can speak the
you know
language.
how they're talking, something like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's
So-
just something that, to be able to have a conversation, to speak language, you know, with people. You know, a lot of these techniques aren't new, right? But when you come in and you say, what's the story, what's a burn down chart, what's your team's philosophy, right? If you don't have the basics, you're thinking, what the hell did they just say, right?
Mhm.
But the concepts aren't that difficult, right?
No, they're not. They're really, really simple. They like, just took away all the junk.
Yeah,
Took away all the junk, all the politics, you know, to a great
Yeah.
degree.
and you can know if you're working with an Agile team, you can take the analogy of that bucket, right? You know that when I go to my backlog bucket, everything's on the list of priority. Right? You kind of just know that, all right, great, when you get to the backlog, we can just go, I'm gonna take the top 5, right? Because I know somebody did their job and they prioritized it. If they haven't done their job and prioritized things, that's, you know, the nice thing about using technology to help facilitate Agile is it'll tell you the backlog's not prioritized. Or you got a messy backlog, right? And, you know, this is in there, but it's not prioritized, things like that.
Yeah,
So,
and, yeah, I'm excited, so I'm
This
glad
is-
to have you here
yeah.
and start to get the message out.
I mentioned jazz.net a little bit.
Mhm.
Jazz.net, what IBM Rational has done over the past 3 or 4 years is we've taken a couple of our core leading edge technologies, and I commend our Rational brand CEO at the time. He pushed the envelope. a lot of IBM policies and had a lot of challenges to make this happen, but I commend him for doing that. He basically says, we need to be more responsive to our customers' demand that's using rational technology. How are we gonna do it? Well, we gotta get closer to them. So, in the technology we're using, we're trying to apply the same agile techniques. So, this jazz.net, our development teams, so here's some of our products. Team concert, requirements composer, some of them are blatantly obvious what they do, right? Requirement management, doors and accesses for systems engineering, requirement management, rational quality manager, right? So quality management solutions, you guys use HP Quality Center, this is, kind of our version of that. And some modeling tools and an enterprise data warehouse. So these product teams, subset of 200 product teams, are actually doing their development, and you can go right to the dashboard and see what their milestones are, what their development plans are. You can go see their dashboards. When they do their, 6-week code drops for betas, they're right here, right? You can get access to them. This is also the same place where you get, see, they're free for 10 developers. If you guys want to try out Team Concert, it's free for 10 developers. That's where you can get to download and try it out. To show you what, and this is you think about IBM's built some really cool products, right? Cool products doesn't make money, innovation makes money, and solving real problems makes money, right? And we're opening up basically our development methodologies to the world. All you need to have is jazz.net ID to see this stuff. You can come in here and you look at, here's the next plan for Rational Team Concert. And our method for how we manage this is always continuously improving, right? They've changed something, they've got a policy like a scorecard, it's not really a scorecard, right? But it's a progress indicator for, it says, here's key capabilities for this next release, and there's a certain level, there's checklists that basically help get validation of system verification test people. I got compliance people involved. But as we get checks and balances on that work item, these are just work items, right? The major story that's for this release. This kind of gives you this big cue as without having to drill down and look at all the stories and more details and things, it kind of gives you a visual cue. As this chart kind of changes from yellow, from red to green, right? It's almost like it's this really fuzzy indicator, but it means something. The combination of all the colors means something. The individual box all by itself doesn't really mean anything. Okay? So we're learning as we do this stuff. Look, the burn down chart, the burn up chart, right? Here's our team's trying to get down 7,000 story points for the next release. So we talk about an agile scale to large teams. If you're doing 7,000 points in 6 weeks, yeah. Right?
Yeah, another thing I like about Agile, as I've been studying it, is that it's fun. A lot of the concepts and terminologies that they use are fun. They have sort of fun built into them. I mean, they have a planning process called playing poker.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have the part of the team concept, one of the team members is called a Batman. His whole purpose is to solve problems. If somebody's having, their laptop breaks down, he's gonna go get in another laptop. He's the Batman. I mean, that's fun.
Yeah.
I hope he's not the Dark Knight, he made a.
But, I mean, the other ways we develop projects, there's nothing fun about it. Project manager standing over, when's it gonna be done?
Yeah.
This case, project manager goes away, just do what you do, you're self-organizing, you guys figure out how you want to do it, and you make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll attribute it. I think the biggest factor of that is, knowledge workers. People that work in this space who profess on as knowledge workers. They use their brain to solve problems and do creative things, whatever it might fit into doing, right? They like to have a sense of accomplishment when they've actually created something. So everybody's an inventor. So they create something. Well, if it takes me a year to invent something that actually is tangible for people, it's like, man, that's tiring, right? If I can do something in 6 weeks,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be more focused and driven to actually get to that 6-week mark.
Yeah.
And so you have the sense of accomplishment much more frequently instead of once a year.
Yeah, and that camaraderie that gets built while you're working together that closely is just awesome, especially if you got the right mix of people working together. It's just really exciting. You know, the most exciting things that I've ever done and has always been with other people, not something that I did sitting in a corner.
Yep.
You know, it's amazing what you can do when you take 3 people that, really sharp people and put them together. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's not additive, it's multiplicative, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Was it a useful session for you?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Good deal.
Well, thank you very much. Turn it over to our president.
Yes, and on behalf of the Detroit chapter, we'd just like to say thank you. It's just a certificate of appreciation.
Oh, thanks.
But we really want to say thank you and have you something to show for the time. I appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
very much.
You didn't get posters, I got posters.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Well, since you two came in late, you have to introduce yourselves to the audience here.
So, my name is Beverly Moore. I'm the Detroit chapter president. And I work for HP, and I'm a senior project manager. And I've been a member of BDPA pretty much all of my career. And I'm excited that you all could come out and enjoy this topic. And thank you.
Hi, I'm Leslie Hampton. I'm a member of BDPA. I'm the VP of Programs and Professional Development. I also like to welcome you all here and thank you for coming out. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And I'd just like to invite you to come again and join with us and even bring your ideas if you have ideas for topics or speakers. Let us know. And you're welcome to everything that we have here. And also, after we conclude here, you're welcome to stay on network a little while and let's get to know each other better. Thanks.
I'd like to remind everyone too, of course, we have a fundraiser this Saturday at Plum Hollow Lanes from 12 to 3 o'clock. Come on down, and if you don't bowl, just donate to the causes to help their training of our high school computer competition students. Want to send them out to Washington and bring back another first place victory for the Detroit chapter. And also, check your social networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also meetup.com. We're posting our events on those systems, and also Twitter. And just let you know, we're doing a little branding change. So actually, if you go to meetup.com, look up Detroit Blacks in Technology. That has our next meeting for May coming up. And also, of course, check our website for other information. That's bdpa-detroit.org. And we'll always place every interesting events that's coming up. Now, anyone who wants to be a software developer, another group, the Detroit IT User Group, and we're also gonna host with them, I believe. With Microsoft, they're gonna show you how to develop for Windows 8, and you don't have to be a coder. So they're showing you how to do coding without coding. So it's a great event. Check our website, register early. It's limited seating. Yeah, you should bring your own laptop so you can run a lot of the demonstration software they'll have available for you. So it's definitely a great event coming up. It's the first Saturday, May 4th. And as we know, software developers are the hot people that they're hiring. It's like every time you look, someone wants a developer.
They can't hire enough.
You're right, and this is a way to get in, because Microsoft has a contest and incentives if you start developing just for their Windows 8 platform. So there's another way to even make a little side cash, because I was at an event, they were talking about just one of the Microsoft developers himself put together a game, and it's brought him about $30,000 a month for the last 6 months. So there's money to be made out there in development.
So they can sign up for that class on our website?
Yes, on our website, there's a link on our website, you can sign up for that class.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that, even if you're not going to go to coding, just to get that knowledge of how to do this stuff, like I said, it helps you for your agile developers. They go, oh, so that's what the program is saying when they we want that.
Yeah, I met Ed at the Agile conference that was in March. It happens every year, and that was an awesome event.
Yep.
And as a developer, the Agile, you don't know what shop you're gonna work in, so you could end up in a shop that's using a different software, Agile software. So I asked Ed to come and show us his software, which is the IBM's version. There's another version of that same kind of software called Raleigh, and next week we're gonna have Raleigh come in and show us their software, that version of their software.
Yeah, next month.
Yeah, next month, right. So, it's definitely a change that's happening in the workplace, and you want to be on top of it. BDPA is here to help you stay on top of that.
And if I could put Dr. Allen on spot, your company, you're a recruiter, so what are your skills you're looking for today from your candidates? Is it still software developers or?
Well, we're a relatively new company, and right now we're looking for Java developers, but our other areas are just computer techs, network administrators, project managers, and web developers.
Okay, awesome.
All right, well, I'm gonna hit the road.
Okay.
Thank you
Yep.
again.
Okay.